And this table is kind of like a record keeper to say, like, what if we do A, if we do X, we get Y benefit. So X in this case is removing that lower berm. Well, what does that do? Well, right at point of interest 1, which is the pipe chopper plaza, we reduce our 25-year flood elevations by 1.3 feet. Big change right off the bat just by removing that berm. And then we reduce our 100-year water surface elevation by 2.7 feet. So just by removing that obstacle in the way, we are pulling this building, this price rocker complex, straight out of the special flood hazard area. No more problems there. Now you can see as this record keeping goes on that benefit goes away pretty quickly. So by POI 2, we get no benefit at the 25-year event, and at the 100-year we start to see it go away, and it's almost completely go away by the time we get up to Depot by Kingston Bridge. So that's what we call the low-hanging fruit. Very easy to remove, get some really good benefit from that. So as we're thinking about this, think about the things I asked you about before. Would the community want the benefits gained from these kind of interventions? Is there any kind of political hiccups that may happen, or things that we're not thinking about? Maybe this has got some kind of sentimental value to the community. Also to the farming field that's here, that's going to flood anyways. This berm really doesn't protect it because there's so many ways for water to get back up in here. So agriculturally, it really doesn't serve much purpose either. And also, well, this is not for this particular intervention, but the ones that we're about to see is that if we start moving things around, where can we put these things in the future? So as I said, these things are going to be cumulative. We look at things in isolation, and we look at things working together, and so we start moving upstream. Now we're assuming that berm is out of the way. Now our next upstream area that we think that can be removed is this very notable hump. You see a low-lying floodplain, the lighter orange up here, lighter orange down in here, and this big brown bump in here, which is the athletic fields. So if we were to remove those athletic fields, well, what kind of gain do we get? Well, we start moving the needle a little bit more. At the 100-year, we start getting a half foot of elevation drop up here by the depot area. A little bit more in this area here in terms of reduction at the 25-year. So 5C, we get some, but maybe it might not be enough to offset the benefit that we're getting. And also moving the athletic fields, and there may be some things that the community doesn't want to see moved. They could be even lowered, which would cause flooding a little bit more frequently, but it doesn't have to completely relocated, but we're assuming that that hump is no longer there. So that's the 5C alternative. Now 5D is assuming that 5D is assuming that 5C is in place. Now what this is that now we're creating a floodplain bench here about 200 feet wide, starting right at that area where the ball fields have been relocated or lowered, and extending that upstream through the depot area, right up through there. Now what do we see from that? Well, geez, we start seeing over a foot gain of water surface elevation reduction. So we're actually now pulling homes out of the special flood hazard area up in this region through here. 6 homes and POI 3 will be out of there. We start seeing, and 15 homes total, we'll start seeing reduced damage. So by removing this obstruction rate through here and widening out the floodplain, we start seeing immediate benefits upstream. Again, think about how this, to do that, we need to relocate 2 buildings. I think there's just 2 garages through here. And then that's really the biggest relocation besides the ball fields here. That's either lowered or relocated. But you start seeing all of this benefit right through there. Now that area is going to look different because it's going to be kind of a nice willowed floodplain area, but the community really starts to see some pretty notable benefits as you start moving upstream.
George, I have a question though. If you lower the ball fields, doesn't that mean the lower end of the price dropper flood is flooding? If you're talking about the ball fields flooding, if you lowered them, wouldn't that then in turn flood McDonald's and Ace Hardware?
Well,
he said if he lowered the ball fields and the ball fields would flood.
Right.
Would that in turn flood that area then?
The price dropper? No. It does not raise the water surface elevations. You can see if we go down here, so this is the benefit that we get if we just remove the berm, 2.7 feet right at the price chopper. And if you remove the ball fields, that water surface elevation drops down to 2.9 feet. So the price chopper still stays high, and the water surface elevations don't increase and flood the price chopper through there. Because impacts that we do upstream typically don't lower downstream water surface elevation.
You know what the cut would be through the ball field? That might help it picture in his mind of how deep you're actually talking through that area to get to that bank full height. Because he's looking at it and saying, you're in the McDonald's parking lot, the ball fields are higher than you.
8 feet higher.
Right, providing that, but I think when you're talking about actual bank elevation level dropping that, it would be a substantial
Even standing
cut.
at the 100-year flood elevation and looking at that, you're at 7 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a substantial cut through there.
Oh yeah,
Huge.
yeah. Because you can see how high that jumps out on this half map here, how much higher those ball fields are than the price chopper parking lot itself. So we have to lower all that down and really through it, but it doesn't impact the price chopper lot without it.
But depending on how much you're recommending to remove, you got sewer trunk line going through that lot. And you also got the water system, I think is closer to the road, but also the college trunk line comes
The water
under,
system.
under the field tying to our line. Because besides being the old creamery, I guess the college used to have their sewer plant there.
Well, that's not there anymore.
So that's not there, so the trunk line, where it used to be, runs to the river to our trunk line.
Yep.
So I don't know the depth of our trunk lines, so we might have to talk to
Okay.
our sewer supervisor or
Right.
water department,
Yep.
Not that you're recommending 8 feet and the pipe is only 6 feet in the ground.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll have to get that information when we develop our cost estimate, because that's what have to be impacted about, if we are lowering it to a lower level. But it is going to be, we want to turn this dark brown area to the color that you see upstream and downstream, so it's basically an even transition through there. So that probably is, you're looking at 12 feet down to maybe 6 feet or so. So you're looking at somewhere 6 to 8 feet of lowering. And that will impact. It's not just a grading exercise, but if there's utilities in there, we have to include that in the cost, et cetera.
We ran into the same situation on Water Street in Walton. We ran into a 6-inch high pressure NICEAG gas line that has to be relocated at a new depth because of the floodplain reclamation project that's proposed there. The good news is a lot of flood mitigation alternatives, they've set aside funding for stuff like that, just specifically infrastructure relocation, if it can be done. If you have gravity lines, obviously you're going to have different issues, but all your infrastructure that can be moved, there are pots of funding out there for just that, for those floodplain reclamations. So that'll take us into consideration with the cost for sure.
Yeah, I just don't know, like I say, the depth, but obviously the village system is all gravity fed.
Yep. And they would look at, is there another route it could take to relocate to? What would be the cost of that if that had to go that route? They would look at several different alternatives to how could you solve that and what would be the cost on it to be able to give you guys the information to weigh the decision on it.
In a case like that with an athletic field, would there be funding to relocate those athletic fields?
I can't say specifically that's met anybody's criteria yet to see that, but if reclamation involves a relocation of that, there's several different sources of funding. I mean, we can justify it. I don't want to speak just for like city funding, which everybody would say, oh, they just automatically should relocate that. If they're not willing to, there are other state grants, there's other ways to go about doing things like that. So I don't think that would be off the table by any means, but I don't know of any set fund right this second that would say, absolutely.
But with this information in hand now, that we say if we start doing these effects, we're pulling out, a dozen homes or more, or reducing the impact, the flooding impacts of a dozen homes or more. We're starting to see really notable effects up through here. Just with these interventions downstream here, that's, we have that evidence to point to, like, well, now we can go out and get this because we can get a big return on our investment if we do this. And, still we're really only relocating 2 garages that are there and the athletic fields. So not a lot of individual homes or businesses outside of those garages or major roads that need to be impacted. So this is, I just want to talk a little bit, because when we talk about things, we're looking at isolation here and in accumulation in aggregate. You know, this is a 3A, so we knew that there was a problem, you know, around this area of a lot of homes on the east bank here that are in the special flood hazard area. There's some inundation up in the telephone building office through here. Also, we're aware of the homes up along Bridge Street. County buildings are getting wet. So we started looking at individual practices close to those points of interest in isolation, and then we tie them back in. But so if we just do some floodplain manipulation up here with a 90-foot wide bench that's 3 feet deep, and we relocate the telephone, the outbuilding they have back there, and then the garage that's right up, this is a private garage right through there, that would have to happen. But we don't see a lot of benefit, so we don't see anything downstream, because usually the impacts we see is upstream. And so at PI 4, we only see about 0.3 of a foot, which is maybe 4 inches, which is not a lot of gain from all of that, as if we just looked at it in isolation. This note here we'll come back to, but this originally we looked at, we didn't even think about touching the bridge abutments. It's usually the approaches to the roads that are causing a lot of the hydraulic problems, and we'll get to that in a second. But if we take 3A, that area here, and we tie it into everything that's done downstream, so now we have this nice long continuous floodplain bench up through here, and you can see this is still natural up through here, and then we add that back in, we start to amplify the benefits that we're getting. Now we're jumping from 1.2 feet up to 1.4. We're now getting a foot gain, where here we're only getting 0.3 of a foot gain. So now we're starting to really see, besides everything we've done downstream, now we're getting even more stuff upstream in terms of homes that are coming out of the special flood hazard area, in terms of the less damage that is happening. And still, you know, if we're keeping Cali here, it's the athletic fields, it's these 2 garages, and then it's that private garage, and then the telephone outback building. And now we're seeing this kind, we're talking feet in gain in terms of reduction of water surface. And effectively, we're taking the 100-year flood water flow and reducing it to what the existing 25-year is. So we're getting a lot of benefit from, in terms of shrinking our flood hazard, our flood zone through this cumulative effect through here. Any questions so far? Okay, and then finally we jump up to on the other side of Bridge Street, and we're doing some more of this floodplain manipulation. The DPW salt shed will be removed, proposed to be removed, and then the 2 homes that are really uptight towards the Bridge Street, because we need to get that to be able to make the floodplain bench move through here. And then in isolation, it doesn't get us a lot. I think that number says 0.4 of a foot at the 100-year flow. By itself, not a lot of big improvement, but when you combine that with everything else we've done downstream, you know, it hasn't really moved the needle all that much. So we're not getting a lot of gain in that area through that activity, but still some to be noted about. And we are, you know, the benefits of 5 is that 7 homes and now have less damage if we do that cumulatively all the way upstream. But in those 2 notes that we saw here in the previous slide, it's really like these bridges that are starting to really impact. We looked at the bridge impact, I should say, and if we were to actually change the way that Kingston Bridge and Bridge Street Bridge look like, so we actually increase the amount of flow going on the right bank if you're looking downstream, so the west branch, and actually just convey a lot more flood flows through here. What do we get? Well, we want to compare these numbers here. So we're looking at an 18-inch drop in water surface elevations at all the DPW facility and all the homes on Bridge Street if we do these alternatives. So you compare that to what we see here is just a foot. So we're, you know, by doing this, we're actually getting a lot of almost 50% more increase in water surface, or reduction in water surface elevations. So it's by looking at manipulating these bridge geometries, we really do get no amount of benefit. But this is really gonna impact the way the community looks. And, you know, there's gonna take, this is gonna require some of the buildings on the right branch to be moved, relocated out of the way. Both bridges will have to be rehabbed, at least on the right side. We wanted to maintain the road profile as much as possible, so raising the road profile wouldn't cause complications with driveways. But we do see the result of the impacts on the bridges, you know, if we increase the amount of flow through there. So again, we'll, you know, quantify that in terms of how many homes that are now being pulled out sufficiently, so there's actually some kind of benefit requirement. But we just wanted to throw that up in here, that this is an intervention that does get notable benefits out of it through there.
I have a question. There's no benefit to removing that island by the Kingston Creek Bridge?
That is a really good question. What we did in this exercise, there was a 3B that we looked at. And what that was is that we had to, we did what we show here, but then we removed that island. But then, because this entire island is just removed, we would create this, basically this big pond where sediment will start to fall out and the island will start to build up again. So what we did is we basically removed most of this island and then built this floodplain bench. So you would have a continuous floodplain through here that way. So we did look at that, but the benefits weren't very notable. That's why I didn't make it up here as one of those. You know, if we compared that exercise with what we did here, and it really didn't get us much in terms of water reduction because of that bridge being the way it's designed as is. It doesn't give us that amount of improvement through there.
So George, if you combine the removal to bankful of the island in combination with the replacement of the structure, what would we get? What kind of results would you get then? Because I can see the model not having any results if you just remove the island, because you still have, it's got to be a combination approach for sure. So if you actually cleared that off and then flew it with a bridge, then what would you have for results?
Okay. I think it's the bridge that is going to do it, and so I'd say there'd probably be some notable improvement because of the bridge. The bridge is the main driver, and I don't think that removing the island is going to notably by itself increase, even with the bridge opening that way compared to the two, because I think there's still enough conveyance around both sides. So we'll model that in combination through there.
Because I could see maybe the recommendation for Kingston Street Bridge may be that combination of both of those. To say, hey, if you had this span and this new elevation through here, this is the results you would get. I don't think it doesn't make sense to do one without the other.
Right.
I don't see New York State doing anything if they just rebuilt the bridge.
I was told they only did the superstructure. Did they do the entire bridge?
No, they just replaced everything and they said it's good for another 30 years. So I don't see them doing anything for 30 years.
Now they did the same thing and did the same results in Phoenicia and got that one funded to the tune of $25 million by showing the results of what could be the benefits of doing that. So I always err on the side of do what you can for a maximum benefit and put it in front of them and say, hey, you may have this and you may say this is good for another 30 years, but here's the benefits of doing it this way. And when you do replace it, you know, this is what the
Oh yeah, I
community
can see a
support.
replacement, but if they just sunk how many millions into it to refurbish it, then I can turn around and redo it again. Not right away. They get, you know, everybody has priority in bridges, right, Wayne? So, yeah, and besides, you know, the water does stay in the banks with the bridges. Now it hits the, you know, the undergirders, but it's never topped the bridges.
Yeah, and this exercise shows that, you know, the existing blue line here is the water, so it doesn't overtop the bridge. The gray is the bridge itself, and these are the trusses that are there. And that blue line doesn't show that it's going over the top of the bridge. But the pink lines, the purple lines, show that this is the 100-year, the existing, that's where it is on the Kingston Bridge, and this is the proposed one, the purple line right there. And you can kind of make out the blue line there. That's a 25-year flood event. So we're basically taking the 100-year flood and reducing it to a 25-year flood through these exercises. So yes, it doesn't overtop the bridge, but homes upstream get impacted because
Right,
of
I
that.
understand what you're saying, I just don't see the state doing anything since they just spent money and the Bridge Street Bridge, you know, doesn't even touch the bridge because the road is actually much lower than the bridge,
Yep,
so
that's what it
it
shows.
skirts around it.
Yep.
One thing that you guys brought to our attention under the, at the commission was that as soon as that water touches that bottom cord, they shut it down.
They shut it
which-
down because
Which
of
then
debris.
effectively cuts your municipality in half.
Oh, it does.
So if you could actually use that as part of your leverage as well, I understand everything you're saying, use that as part of your leverage as well, say, hey, you can reduce it down to the 25-year level now with that span, and you don't have that same effect. It's a benefit for, now it's a benefit for emergency services, it's a benefit to your hospital, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and you have more benefits that way. So we'll just try to maximize what we can collectively with our minds to maximize the benefits and then put it in their hands. And then if they say no,
If they'll say good idea, they'll do it in 30 years.
How about a drawbridge?
we haven't had to run one of those yet, let's try it.
Yeah.
It's still a new bridge, John.
Yeah.
Forget it. The old one's dead.
I mean, it, you know, it's just gonna raise up and let it go through.
You gotta be optimistic, you know.
Well, Al, neither one of us will see a new bridge in our
Well,
lifetime.
And just as an academic exercise, we totally removed the bridge at Bridge Street. And there's a place a couple thousand feet upstream that makes good sense to put it. But we wanted to see, just as this modeling exercise, what would that do for us? And we compare the numbers here and here, and we really don't see any kind of notable benefit at all by doing that. And that gets back to that thing is that, you know, water still being able to bypass over the approach road, and you know, there's homes through there, so this is we're conscientious about that. But even removing the bridge through there, we don't really see that benefit, just the way that the cross section is.
Is that just the Bridge Street Bridge you said?
Bridge Street Bridge, yeah. And assuming that Kingston is revamped. So in summary, this is what we're looking at. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll collect some feedback from the boards about the proposed things. Please keep in mind about these things that we talked about. What the community want the benefits gained from these, despite the temporary and permanent impacts. And does the intervention, if we have to relocate buildings, you can see them on the map, how many buildings we'd have to move, what kind of ball fields we move. Do we have that existing space in Delhi, or do we have to go through some zoning exercise to do that? Is that palatable to the community? So think about that over the next couple of weeks. Last but not least, we're going to go through our last two areas. This should go relatively quickly. Elk Creek. Here's Elk Creek Road going through this way. And this is a tributary that's going down through Elk Creek. This barn is no longer here, it burned down. But this is the crossing that goes right through there. The concern is that when this crossing plugs, which is, there's a lot of debris coming up through here. It's a very steep, narrow headlands up or valley up through here. That this will plug and it'll shoot water onto this home and onto this home. So what we did as an exercise, just modeled that and say, okay, well, under existing conditions, clear water, what do we have? So it will pass, most flows are in unobstructed conditions. However, when it plugs, we start seeing that it does overtop and get those two homes wet. So if we increase the span with just a larger arch culvert, we get to pass, even under plug conditions, everything through there. So really the take-home message is that just by extending that bridge, or not bridge, but that arch culvert by a little bit, we still be able to pass that the debris through there and not get those two homes wet. So that one was kind of a low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to move forward on benefit-cost ratio unless there's any other questions on that one. Okay. And then finally, Platinum Brook. This one was brought to us because there are here, these are community-driven hazards of overbank flooding into the factory here, and also along the intersection here of, I think this is County Road 16 and Highway 10 through here. Now we are working with DOT on, they're going to redo this bridge, Highway 10. And we want to make sure is that when it's redone, that whatever it's done, that it matches with our floodplain manipulation that goes through here. The existing bridge, it's going to be just located to the north through this area here. So we want to match that design with what we do up through here. So we prevent water from shooting over this bank and getting up into this here or down along the road and getting through here. So that's Platinum Brook. This is our modeling approach that we collected data on how to do that through this way through here.
Have you guys agreed with the hydrology and stuff like that yet with them?
We reviewed the hydrology, yeah.
And you guys are comfortable with it?
Yeah, and we started with their model, which is consisted of a couple sections. I think that one is how far their model went, and we extended up using the LiDAR and then in-stream channel topography shots through here. Well, we're using our model we're using their proposed bridge geometry in our model, and we looked at their hydrology and we're okay with that. So that's what we're going to run with, and then we'll work with them about proposed bridge dimensions. Have you heard anything back? I know they were going out to bid maybe on the final design.
I haven't heard since you guys were reviewing hydrology. I haven't heard anything from them.
Okay. Yeah. So that's now we're looping back around to this, so we'll tag team on that. So our next steps is we're going to finish. We're going to give the boards a couple weeks to go through these, think about the things that we talked about tonight. We'll collect any feedback from you. We'll look at the other suggestions that we came up with Logan and Steelbrook here down by the confluence, and move those forward. We'll have communications with the Flood Commission as that's going on. And then once we've agreed upon as a group which ones we want to further, then we start developing a benefit cost ratio. We actually really start putting dollars to dollars. We figure out how much these interventions are going to cost. We're going to figure out how much dollars we get from our benefit. There's a FEMA software program that will allow us to do that. So we're actually moving forward towards potential getting FEMA flood dollars or DEP dollars. And then we're going to prepare for our next Flood Commission meeting. And then eventually down the road, once we get everything vetted and some benefit, actually true dollars to the projects, slide, that's all. There. So we're looking at our next Flood Commission meeting where we're totally going to vet and develop the benefit cost ratios and present those. And then we'll start putting together this all into a report. And then we'll have that report reviewed by the Flood Commission. We'll meet with them on it. And then we're shooting for another town board and public meeting sometime in early next year where we have, basically we'll come back to what we talked about first with the public, which is we understand what your flooding problems were. This is our understanding of what causes them. And here are our solutions, and this is what we're going to get for in terms of dollar benefit cost from those. And that we're shooting for early next year.
Is there another meeting that's missing in there, which would be taking all of the data that we've collectively gotten through the commission and the two boards, and actually doing another presentation maybe at the school again, laying it all out for the public and saying, by the way, is there anything else we've missed within this scope? Just one more time to make sure the public feels like they're engaged again. Is there?
Yeah, that's here in the row 13. It's a town board and then a public meeting. So
Okay.
we'll meet with the boards
that's two.
first
Yep.
and present all that, and then just it should be like
Okay.
town board slash or and also, they're two separate meetings. They both happen the same month. We'll have one at the beginning of the month. The board's feedback on all of our everything we talked to today, and then hopefully this is the last check, and then go to the public and say this is what we're going to do. But yeah, absolutely.
How far, Greg, how far is Walton? Walton went through the same process? Are they ahead of us, or?
They're on the West Branch down there. They've adopted, they've accepted their recommendations, and they're starting to implement on just the West Branch itself. Walton's a little different in the fact we're dealing with the West Branch first, and then dealing with the tributaries second. The tributaries are more in line with what you're doing now, time frame wise, but the West Branch has already been. They're already starting to do feasibility analysis and selection of mitigation opportunities for that. But you're real similar, if not just maybe even a touch ahead with your hole in comparison to just their tribs.
Okay, thank you very much, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
That scenario we talked about, gravel building up on Elk Creek. On Elk Creek, for example, where that tributary he's talking about, where that rich
You
comes
don't
down
have
through,
them.
I have walked out